Hi. Oh, friend. Pretty much everyone's over the DC Expanded Universe. Today, I want to tell you the story of how a children's book had me confused for years about what day is actually the shortest day of the year. Like many girls from my generation, I grew up reading American Girl books. If you've never read them, these were extremely formulaic books about girls growing up in America over the centuries. My favorite ones were always the girls whose lives looked very different from mine, which most of them did. I loved Josefina because her books taught me about Mexican traditions and I could relate to her timidity. I liked Kaya because her books broke the formula ever so slightly and I got to learn about the Nez Perce, Nemepu, and their native language. Please forgive me if I'm saying that wrong. I also loved Felicity because I've always been obsessed with the American Revolution, and Felicity got to ride horses. But none of those are the books I want to talk about today. Today, I wanted to talk about Kirsten, a Swedish immigrant whose family settled in Minnesota in the 1800s. And specifically, I want to talk about the book Kirsten Surprise. Now, the Surprise books, which are always the third book in the series, are the Christmas books. What the girl Surprise was always changes a bit. In Josefina's books, I think she plays the Virgin Mary in the parade through the village, where Mary and Joseph just go around to everyone's house and everyone turns them away because there's no room at the inn. Now, in Kirsten's case, the surprise had something to do with playing St. Lucia for St. Lucia's Day. Probably should have read this book again before filming this video. St. Lucia's Day is a holiday or a Christian feast day that is celebrated in Sweden and other Scandinavian countries by singing songs while girls dressed in white dresses with red sashes, wearing wreaths with candles in them, carry cookies and saffron buns in a procession. I'm really glad I'm not Swedish. I probably would have lit my hair on fire more than the twice I already have. Now here's where my confusion began, because apparently the only detail I actually remember from these books was the fact that St. Lucia's Day fell on the shortest day or longest night of the year, and it's also December 13th. Now I know what you're thinking. Amber, how can the shortest day be December 13th? The winter solstice isn't until December 21st. Usually the solstice is the shortest day, and in the summer it's the longest day. That's kind of how this works. Or maybe you're not thinking that and I'm just a nerd who pays way too much attention to calendar terms. And I have an explanation for you. It's actually thanks to calendar reforms. Super exciting stuff. Basically, way back when, Julius Caesar decided, well, not really decided, someone brought to his attention that the calendar no longer accurately reflected a year. I can't even explain to you how they worked that out. Not a mathematician, but there were some really, really smart Greeks and Romans back then. So Julius Caesar made some decisions and changed the calendar. He made some of the months longer and invented the leap year, basically. This calendar, which is known as the Julian calendar, was used for centuries, like a millennia and a half. And in the Julian calendar, the winter solstice fell on, you guessed it, December 13th. So, when a pope decided in the 1500s that we needed another calendar reform, apparently one reformation at a time wasn't enough for this guy. It was determined or discovered that the Julian calendar had fallen behind by about 10 days. So Pope Greg made some decisions and decided that a few ambiguous century years, basically all of those that weren't divisible by 400 for mathematical reasons, wouldn't actually be leap years. Now, I know December 13th and December 21st aren't 10 days apart, but some countries were a little late to the party, so had to adjust their calendars a little more. How we ended up with this 9-8 day difference, I'm not completely sure, and I doubt an accurate explanation would be very interesting here. And there you go. The simplified explanation of the complex series of historical events and major decisions that led to this kid being confused for most of her life as to what the shortest day of the year was. All thanks to a book that was less than 100 pages long. For a smart kid, I have my stupid moments. Happy St. Lucia's Day, everyone, and if you're celebrating it in the Scandinavian tradition, please don't light your hair on fire. I've done it before, it's no fun. And happy Hanukkah, and same goes to you, I guess. Basically, anyone who's going to be around an open flame, please make sure not to set your hair on fire. If you liked this video, you know what to do. I think this might be the first video or blog post I've done where I've talked about confusing, conflicting facts that I've just absorbed as a kid and only thought about later on. I was like, huh, yeah, that doesn't actually make sense. Why doesn't that make sense? Let me know if you'd like more of these random, confusing stories. And hey, I hope you learned something about why our wacky calendar is the way it is. Thanks for listening to me ramble, guys. Bye.